So, you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So you want to be a dungeon.
So you want to be a dungeon master.
So, you want to be a dungeon master.
That's great. We're here to help. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Justin. This week, we're going to be talking about...
Oh. Hang on, Justin. I'm gonna take over this time because we're gonna be talking about something that I don't know that you really haven't really had a whole lot of experience with. This week we're gonna be delving into the wild world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We're gonna be taking a look at the Avatar Legends TTRPG by Magpie Games. It's vastly different from Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of the chunkier bits of other systems and stuff have been more streamlined so that it's more of a narrative style of play. So whether you're a bender or not, there's a lot of things that you can do, and the narrative style kind of leads to a lot more of the role play and flavor opportunities. And we'll be talking about all the core mechanics, how to get started with the game, and there's really a lot to talk about. So let's get into it.
Sounds amazing. Whoa! I've just got butt first. That's never happened.
Yeah.
But first,
let's talk about how familiar are you with the Avatar universe?
I'm pretty familiar. I saw the M. Night Shyamalan. And that's kind of where it ended.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
Lord. Okay.
I'm kidding. And I loved it. No, I also
we don't speak of the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Okay, no. We just do not speak of it.
No, but on all seriousness, yeah, I've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender several times, all the way through, right? And then Legend of Korra, same thing. I've at least seen it all the way through twice. And then I've also read a Kyoshi book also.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That told the story of Kyoshi, how she came into power and who her parents were and like all that crazy shit.
That's really cool. So a really cool thing, and we'll get into it in a minute, but the cool thing about this Avatar Legends system is that it doesn't specifically take place or doesn't have to take place in like the Aang or Korra era. They have a huge amount of resources for pretty much like the Kyoshi, Roku, all of the earlier avatars and stuff. They have a lot of the materials that will cover kind of like what's going on in those specific eras so that you have places for your adventures to start off from. Really dope. I'm actually, the more I read about it, the more I love this system, and I'm going to have to run one of these games.
I would be sick as hell. I would love that. Because I've always loved Avatar. It's always been so freaking good. I remember I was even pissed that James Cameron dare name his blue person movie Avatar. Like, how dare you?
Right? How dare you?
There is
right.
only one Avatar at a time at least. And then they die and get reincarnated. But like, how dare you?
Yeah, this has nothing to do with bending, James Cameron, and I am offended.
Yeah, unobtainium. Go fly.
Yeah,
sir.
Freaking phone it in. Why don't you?
Phone it in. Go back. Make Titanic 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I feel like I know it pretty well. I love all the offshoots of bending. And just like... I was a big fan of all the seasons. I just loved the world building and everything. Everything was so interesting. Obviously, in the first season, it was like a little bit of a downer that you'd never get to really experience other than through flashbacks, like air bending culture.
Yeah, I do love the air nomads are really cool. Yeah, Korra does bring a lot of their kind of culture and lore back into the spotlight, which is nice.
Yeah, very, very cool. Big fan. Not to mention J.K. Simmons playing Aang's son is perfect. He's a fantastic voice actor.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot of fun to watch. But both Last Airbender and Legend of Korra are really, really good. If you haven't seen them, check it out. I mean, come on, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Get your life together.
They're so good.
But yeah, so in that kind of that same kind of vein of exploring the universe, if you could have any bending style, what would you choose?
It's a great question. And I've thought long and hard about this one. I've flip-flopped. I've gone back and forth. I've done all the quizzes online to see what type you are. You know what I mean? I think I would choose, if it was just like up to me, not like what I think the universe would dictate based on my personality. Like just based purely on want.
Fine.
I'm going to go Earthbender.
Nice.
I'm
Okay.
gonna go Earthbender. I would love to maybe a metal bender, maybe a lava bender, even though in our society today, modern day lava bending, I can't imagine it being as useful maybe, but who knows?
Yeah.
Metal bending though.
Metal bending.
Whoa.
Metal bending though.
Yeah. I own a construction company.
Crazy.
How you doing?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm smelted.
It really the turn that metal bending takes in Korra is really cool. I like the way that it kind of leads to like a more steampunky version of reality.
Even lightning bending.
Between that and the lightning bending and the fire bending stuff, all of that. I love how it all kind of played.
The time jump was really fun.
Yeah.
It's a really fun idea to play a time jump, especially. I mean, we're gonna go over like you already mentioned it, like the eras, if you will, and so like it sets it up, gives you enough information where you could do your own time jump.
Yeah,
you might have to change the characters, but you could keep the players.
Absolutely,
a cool idea to be like your own grandson.
Yeah,
that's sick. What about you though?
Yeah, I think I would really want to be a water bender.
Oh, really?
I think water would be kind of where I would want to be, just because it's such a versatile bending style. Like there's a lot of cool, fun offshoots similar to metal bending of like ice and like those cool like swamp bender guys.
Oh yeah. You gonna
that was really cool.
You
and like,
son of a gun.
I don't know. I don't know.
You gonna start blood?
You
son of a gun.
It's
legal.
I might. Yeah, I know, but I'll just do it.
Right, I won't tell anybody, but if you bloodbend me,
right, yeah.
I'm gonna have to lava your ass.
Yeah, no, but I do think the waterbending also with like the communion of like all the plants and stuff, that one cool forest where like all the plants are
all the swamp.
You gotta like reach out through the roots and stuff.
Just
a lot of
so
a lot of fun lot of fun stuff that can be done with waterbending other than just smacking people with water.
Yeah.
Plus I like the martial arts style of the waterbenders. I like the most, I think, out of all of them.
Oh, true. Yeah, I guess for me, I think the one I like the most martial arts wise would maybe be airbenders.
Fair.
Which would be my like second pick, because I just think they're so interesting. And then in Korra, there's gonna be spoilers ahead, I imagine, as I don't know the TTRPG, but I know the show very well, so I might be spoiling some stuff in that regard. But Zahir, the airbending villain.
Oh yeah.
In Korra, that was like, whoa. Airbenders, like I already knew airbenders were pretty badass because of the whole like I can't remember what his name is. I almost called him Master Roshi, but I know that's not it.
I almost called him Master Roshi earlier as well.
Oh man.
Monk Gyatso.
The room where his body is found full of firebender skeletons and stuff. So like I've always known they were cool. And then like when you hear about the older like pre-Kyoshi, whatever the previous airbending avatar was before Aang in the cycle, she was a absolute badass also.
Yeah.
Not to mention Air has the connections to the spirit world, which is like a really interesting thing to explore. Plus, like, maybe you can fly, dude. Who knows?
Maybe you can fly. You just have to lose everything you love.
Woof.
Woof. That's yeah.
Let's get into it, dude.
Let's get into it. Yeah. This is.
Hey, gang. We wanted to talk to you about something pretty important real quick. See, we have some really cool ideas for the future, but we need your help. You can do that by supporting us through our Patreon. At the lowest tier, you get early access to podcast episodes, access to episodes of Action Surge, our post-session table talk show, and entry into a private channel on our Discord server. At the next tier, you can get access to Bonus Action, our bonus content podcast where we talk about a huge variety of D&D and TTRPG related things, like multi-class mystery mashup, where we get 2 random classes and have to build a character, or Monster Matchmaker, where we go over our favorite monsters at each CR level, or recaps of our home campaign, plus so much more. Joining the Patreon helps us continue to grow and put out content that gets better and better as we learn, improve, and try new things. So, check out the link in the description to join the gang today.
It is pretty chunky. I put a lot of notes down just for my own reference, so I'm not flipping through pages and stuff. But yeah, let's get into the actual like meat of it here. So this Avatar Legends role-playing game is the Avatar universe in essence in its own TTRPG form. Within the core rule book, and there's also a supplemental adventure guide that came with it. The coolest thing I think about this RPG is that it gives you resources to not necessarily have to stay within the Avatar / Korra version of the universe. There are different timelines and time periods, and each one comes with their own sets of struggles and groups and NPCs and stuff like that. And so just kind of going over the ones that are the way that they have them listed is by avatar. Like who was the avatar at the time when whatever setting you're in. So like there's the Kyoshi era, which is like the early formation of the 4 nations. This is kind of borders are being set. It's kind of a more wild frontiersy vibe where you're more dealing with like bandits and like what happens when you don't have a centralized government to keep powers in check. So you're dealing with a lot of like governmental corruption on like a city scale versus like macro nation scale. So each kind of area comes with their own, foibles, their own kind of troubles that they have to deal with, which is really cool. And I like that less civilized, Lord have mercy, less civilized approach to it. There's a lot more space between settlements. Settlements are generally on the smaller side. And yeah, it just is, that's a really fun era to work with. There's also the Roku era, which obviously was immediately before the 100 Years' War. This is the borders are set for the most part for all of the countries. But it's kind of got like almost a Cold War vibe where every nation is kind of waiting for some other nation to start making moves against them because the borders are set, but there's still a little bit of threat of invasion from different countries and stuff. It's the issues at hand are more political than combat based during this era.
Yeah.
So it's very much like, we're sneaking around, we're trying to get intel, we're trying to find this one person who knows if something's going to be happening. It definitely has that kind of more, like I said, like a kind of a Cold War-ish vibe of everybody's on edge and waiting for the other shoe to drop because it's still very much borders are set, but it could change at any moment.
Yeah.
Because then, of course, the Fire Nation attacked. And that leads us into the 100-Year War era, which is the time where Aang is basically asleep as an avatar. And this is very much the Fire Nation is taking over, controlling everything. Most of the plot points and all the places, things, important people are going to be like resistance fighters and trying to figure out a way to keep the Fire Nation at bay or something along those lines. So it's definitely a little more kind of combat heavy, I would put it at. Not necessarily like combat, but it is very much a little man taking on the big power type of vibe. And then it goes into the Aang era, which technically the show takes place at the very end of the 100 Years' War. So technically the Aang era doesn't start until after the show ends. It's that time period between Last Airbender and Korra. And this is kind of it's more of a social side of things of, trying to heal the damage that the Fire Nation has caused, the loss of culture, the loss of lives, the loss of everything, kind of trying to rebuild after this horrible, horrible war.
Yeah.
And then, of course, then we get into the Korra era, which is kind of the more modern, the show kind of drifts between like turn of the century and full modern. And that's kind of where we're at with this. It's that weird, it's kind of like steampunky ish, where people are starting to use their fire bending and earth bending, or their bending in general, for more industrial purposes of, we've got skyscrapers, we've got cars and motorcycles, and we've got all these other, kind of more modern things. But bending is still very prevalent.
Yeah, it's worked its way into society,
mm-hmm.
right? Like,
yeah, and I really love that. Yeah,
and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
metal bending,
absolutely.
Wild.
There's the pro bending competitions and stuff like that, where people, are actually, paid to do bending stuff like a soccer player would be, I'm really good at bending. Let me just get a job bending kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool. Obviously capitalism, dealing with that kind of more, espionage and a little column A, little column B, kind of dealing with the Fire Nation trying to rise up again. Cause those little bastards are always doing something. And, yeah, but the cool thing about all of this, like I said, is in the core rulebook, it gives you plot hooks. It gives you setting details of like, hey, this is what's going on in the Earth Nation during this period. Literally goes this, it is like in depth of, this is what's happening with the air tribes. This is what's happening with water tribes. This is what's happening with Fire Nation. This is what's happening with the Earth Nation. And it gives you setting details, plot points, and stuff like that. It's really, really cool.
That's dope. That's like literally everything you need.
Right.
And then you could like choose if you wanted to build off of whatever you wanted, take what you want, leave what you don't. You know what I mean? The same way that we at our home games have done, like used Faerun, and been like,
right.
Here are parts of Faerun like water deep that I'm going to keep. And here are parts that I'm like, whatever. I don't really care about that part. Like if you so chose. But also it sounds dope to have all that information of like how certain tribes or factions have changed over time is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
It's just let's talk about that for a second. It's actually
out. Yeah.
It's actually so cool if you really think about it, because it's like, how many D&D settings explore time in that way? Like there might be history,
right,
of course, where they're like, here's the history of this land, but it's not like here's 5 different generations you could play the game in or something.
Right. You show up to Waterdeep when it's just a little port city or like port town where like, this is where the river mouth meets the ocean. So obviously stuff is going to start popping up here, but it's not the full Waterdeep that, everybody knows from Baldur's Gate, and, a lot of games use that as the setting / jumping off point for stuff.
For sure.
And usually it's this big bustling city, but I mean, how cool would it be to just see it as like a humble little town of a couple hundred people, and all of the stuff that goes on with that of, all these monsters are trying to get into the town and all that stuff. I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun thought experiment.
It's really, really cool.
But yeah, like even like it goes through like Earth Kingdom in the Kyoshi era has the poisoning of the Earth Sages. There was a whole thing where a group of Earth Sages basically were betrayed by a bender, and how the implications and stuff of that. I'm not going to sit here and read the whole book to you, but there's all kinds of stuff in here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's basically the setting details. So you can kind of choose what world you want to play in, which is very unique to this system. The system itself, let's get into the actual gameplay aspect of this. So the way this works is it is a D6 system as opposed to a D20 system, which is what, obviously we're all used to. And as the dungeon master or game master, you don't have to set DCs. Like literally the way that it works is if you are asked to roll a skill check of whatever type, if you roll a 7 or higher, it works. If you roll a 6 or lower, it doesn't work. There's obviously more nuance to it as we kind of progress, but like that's the main kind of system of how this is an actual role-playing game as opposed to just sitting down and telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Like the dice actually have a play in it, but it cuts out on a lot of the stuff that a GM has to prep or, really think about too much. It's okay, roll your dice. I got a 10. Perfect. This is what happens.
Yeah.
I rolled a 2. Okay, well, that doesn't work. Here's what happened.
Yeah, just having a set universal DC that doesn't change based on every single individual interaction.
Right. And it's there's only 4 stats, 6 if you count the balance track, and there's no sub skills like athletics, acrobatics, whatever. It's when you do something, it's going to fall under one of those 6 things.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to roll, and you're going to use what your character sheet says to add or subtract to it, and that's that. There are certain moves that you can do that will, that really is what you wind up rolling dice for. But a large portion of this game is just straight up flavor and role play. There's not a whole lot of skill checks that you do.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like, if you say you want to do something, you do it unless there's some kind of opposing thing that happens, or you're trying to specifically use a move that you have to roll for.
Right.
It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And it also really streamlines the storytelling experience of you go from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene, as opposed to, okay, we finished up here. Now let's go do some travel from here back to town. Maybe something happens. Let's roll on a table, see whatever. Let's go do a shopping episode. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. It's almost always action. Like you're always in the action in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
The whole system is set up to feel like you're watching an episode of Avatar, basically. And I'll get into what I mean by that in a minute. But like the whole thing is basically set up in acts. You go through, you play through play through Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then that's the end of the session. And then there's like a recap thing where you go over, okay, what did your player learn? What did your character learn? What skills have they honed, and all of that? And then basically that all gets resolved, and then you pick up again in the next session. The way they describe it in the book of the actual gameplay, they call it the conversation. Basically, you are all sitting at the table having a conversation about what's happening in the story. Everybody has equal amounts of input. Everybody gets to choose what they do with their characters, what they think other NPCs might be doing, stuff like that. And it basically boils down to different scenes of, hey, I want to go do this. Cool, you're going to go off and do a scene. I want to go do this. Cool, you're going to go off and do the thing. Like, go ahead and split the party, because when you reach that Act 3 stuff, it makes it super dramatic. And I've actually, like, in playing this, I've played through like 2 sessions of this. 2 or 3 sessions of this where I GM'd it, and I kind of love it, as opposed to like D&D where everybody should stay together, or the golden rule, don't split the party or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and split that party. It makes it so much more dramatic as you're getting into that climax of, hey, this character's over here doing XYZ. Cool. All right, go ahead and do, what are you doing? Roll your passion. Awesome. Cool. We'll come back to you in a minute. and then you cut over to another group.
Yeah.
It really gives it that kind of, feeling of a lot of things happening all at once, which I really enjoyed.
I mean, that's how most TV works. If you're trying to if you're trying to emulate the feeling of watching an episode of Avatar, then it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that I kind of figured out is like, you're not trying to run a session more as direct an episode.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's fun.
Yeah, so basically in each scene, the GM will describe whatever the scene is, and then everybody kind of starts talking about what they think is going on, what they think their character would do. So that is the shotgun scattershot overview of the game, is how it progresses. I'm gonna jump around a little bit as far as what we have on this outline, because I think it's better for us to talk about setting up a session first. And then we'll get into the actual like mechanics of stuff.
Okay.
So basically when you go to set up a session, you'll choose an era that you want to play in and kind of the scope of what you're doing as a party. So obviously era would be, pick an Avatar era, Kyoshi, Roku, 100-Year War, what have you. You'll pick that era as a group, and then you'll decide your scope. Do you want to do a worldwide broad scope where you're going from city to city to city, or do you want to have a more narrow scope of we're going to stay in Ba Sing Se, or we're going to stay in Omashu, or whatever? I can only think of Earth Nation cities right now, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You kind of you pick a city and you stay in that city, and it's real local. And that's not to say that it might change from session to session what you want to do as a party, depending on how the story progresses.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of you pick a setting, pick a scope, and then you pick a focus for your group. And the way that they kind of have it set up in this game, in this system, is there really is no mechanics for being like a chaotic neutral or an evil or what have you. It's generally everybody is going to be playing a adolescent / teenager, and you are all like, you're part of the group and you're going to work with the group no matter what type of situation. However you guys wind up making those connections, it's kind of something that gets done in like the player creation side of things.
Right.
But it's very kids on bikes of, okay, this is the group. Now, how does everybody know each other?
Yeah. So it's implied that you guys are a group. So it kind of just
exactly,
which is like true of D&D, but like games like this, like Kids on Bikes, they put a couple mechanics in character creation behind it to really nail it down. To be like, no, you're a group. You can be a lone wolf, but you still have connections.
Right, exactly.
Whereas D&D just hopes that you do that.
Pretty much
to the chagrin of many.
No, this is very much, it is baked in the system that you are a group and you're working together.
Mm-hmm.
So basically as a group, you kind of decide, what do we want to do this session? Do we want to defeat a foe, protect a place or a person, do some kind of a fetch quest to go out and get this thing and deliver it to this person, or, kind of gain information, sneak in somewhere, read some hidden book or something.
Yeah.
But like at the beginning of every session, there's a discussion between the GM and the player. Now the GM can obviously have their story written the way that they would like to write it, but the system itself leans more to the players also having a say in which story gets told. And I think that I like that just because everybody has different ideas on how things should progress and how their players would act and all that stuff. And I think having a discussion at the top of like, hey, this is what we're going to do as a group. So like, each session is divided into 3 acts. Act 1 is going to be the inciting incident of, hey, this jerk has taken over Omashu and we need to defeat him to get him off the throne. Mm-hmm. Bang. That's your inciting incident. Act 2 is really what your players are doing to further that or to go against that. And I had this page marked because it was really cool, and now I cannot find it. Just a moment. Oh god, there it is. Okay. So like in Act 1, you know, there are on the geez. I felt more prepared for this when we started, but no. In the book also there is a campaign creation worksheet, and by campaign it usually means session. That's also by no means like exactly just one session. It could take a couple of sessions, like if you want to do a 2-part or whatever.
Yeah.
But the way that it usually breaks down, so Act 1, it asks you some. It says basically you make a statement of we befriended some ally who gave us access to valuable items, or we discovered a secret hidden by some powerful figure. We learned the frightening plans of some foe, right?
Right.
And all of that kind of gets detailed out right at the beginning, and you decide who you're going against and all that stuff. And then in Act 2, it says we stole this item from the foe, or we defended an ally from this foe. We destroyed this item and drew the ire of its owner, this powerful bad guy or whatever. Like that's the Act 2 is our response to whatever happened to Act 1. And then Act 3 is going to be your big climactic confrontation of the episode, whether it be fighting and, defeating this foe, or escaping, getting away.
Yeah.
Or getting rescued, or what have you.
Captured.
Exactly.
Whoa.
And then that gets covered in Act 3. And then basically all of these things, all of these, what's going to happen in the session gets decided at the top of the session, and then you guys play through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that because it kind of gives you a general idea of where it's going, and it makes it easier to direct it as a episode.
Yeah.
As well as it puts everybody on the same page player wise of, hey, this is what we're going to do. Now let's explain how we're going to do it, type of deal. And it kind of takes a little bit of the thought of, oh no, what are we going to do? Where in like D&D, oh, you beat the big bad and you get all these clues. Now what do you do with them? And there's that whole kind of bit of discussion or whatever. Now you know, kind of going in, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And yeah.
like
Which I kind
that.
of like. It keeps everybody on track, keeps it from derailing too much. And honestly, these sessions, you can bang them out in a couple of hours.
Yeah, it probably helps with pacing.
And yeah, it really does. It really does, because you can be like, okay, cool. Now that this is over, we're going to call this the end of Act 1. We're moving on to Act 2. This is the scene.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, I'm thinking of do you know the Avatar episode with Omashu and King Boomy, like the first one, where you first meet King Boomy for the first time? Yeah. So in my head, to help explain the act, what is it called? System, if you will. Act 1 would be they make it to Omashu and they start surfing down the delivery chutes, right?
Right.
Maybe like towards the end of that, getting captured by Boomy. Act 2 being all of the trials, and like Katara and Sokka being like eaten by rock candy, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then the climax, to me at least, this is just my interpretation of it. Maybe I'm a little off, but and then the climax would be the final fight with Boomy, where they actually fight each other, and it's revealed, I'm your old friend.
Right.
And then that would be it.
Yeah. And that's it. And I mean, that's just basic episode structure. Like that's just kind of play structure in general. Like you got your Act 1 of introducing all the characters and elements. Act 2, those elements are now in contention and something needs to happen. And then Act 3 is the resolution of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah. And so that's kind of how the game is played. It's very simple and yet complex at the same time. And it gets more complex as we get into the kind of core elements of the game itself. So I'm going to give broad strokes of this, and then we'll get into kind of character creation and all of that stuff. So the core elements of this game, like the main mechanics you got to think about are The first and foremost is going to be your fatigue level. Everybody has the same amount of fatigue as far as players. You're going to get a track of 5 with 5 fatigue points, and then there's also 4 conditions. And that is basically your health pool. It never grows, it never reduces or whatever. It's just you have your 5 fatigue points and your 4 conditions, and that is how much health you have, quote unquote. Depending on the strength of certain NPCs / enemies and stuff like that, they may have more or less on the fatigue side of things. Like Avatar Aang and Avatar Korra and stuff have like 15 fatigue points that they can use, that can get used up or what have you. Yeah, it's huge. Their health pool is huge. And also a lot of the bad guys, like a lot of the bad NPCs, like the big bads of the series, also have similar levels of fatigue and what have you. The fatigue track basically moves either up or down based on combat. Like if you are attacked or something like that, it'll say mark a fatigue point or take a condition, or something else. There are some things called, there's a thing called balance, which I'll talk about in a second, that also plays into how much fatigue and stuff. Also, some moves that you use will have you mark a fatigue point, or if you have a failure or something like that, one of the things that a GM can use is kind of fatigues and conditions to move along, to basically give you that failure, or like have a consequence of failure. Once your fatigue track is full, anytime it says mark 1 fatigue or such and such happens, you can know if your fatigue track is full, you have to do whatever that second action is, whether it's mark a condition, or with the balance stuff, it'll be you have to take action according to whoever use this move on you. Like you have to do what they say, basically.
Gotcha.
So getting into conditions, those are all triggered. Yeah, so those are basically things that are triggered by combat, that by certain moves and certain combat stuff basically will force you to take a condition. And the different conditions are down a little bit lower, I think. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Wow. So unprepared. You should fire me.
Different than status effects?
Yes, they are different from status effects. So conditions are afraid, angry, guilty, insecure, or troubled. And basically, these are things that are role play more than mechanical, sort of.
That's cool.
Once you have a condition, you can take an action to clear that condition off. So like if you're on the verge of dropping and you have like, oh, your whole fatigue track is full and you have a couple of conditions, you can actually clear a condition by taking an action. So if you're afraid, you can simply run away from danger or difficulty and it will clear that fear effect. Like you can just run. If
Not
you're
me.
angry,
I would never run.
If you're angry, to clear that condition, you can break something important or lash out at a friend. If you're guilty, you'll make a personal sacrifice to absolve your guilt. If you're insecure, you can take a foolhardy action without talking to your companions. If you're troubled, you could seek guidance from a mentor or some powerful figure, and that will clear those conditions. And that way, and if worse comes to worse, if you're in a combat situation, you're not going to drop. But that's kind of how that works. As far as the different conditions, once you're fatigued and all conditions are full, you drop. And basically you can't do anything for the rest of the encounter until somebody helps you.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that kind of leads more into the actual kind of combat mechanics, which I've saved for the very end because there's a lot of stuff to talk about prior to that. So after we talk about conditions, which is, the fatigue and conditions are basically your health pool. The other thing we got to talk about is, and this is kind of what the Avatar, it's this is kind of what gives it that Avatar feeling of personal growth and development. Because, the characters themselves are not static. They don't always believe the same thing at the beginning of a season versus the end of a season. Like their whole personalities have shifted and they've taken on different things. So like, for each type of character, like there's 10 different archetypes that you can choose from. For each type of character, they have a moral guide. Basically, it's a track of 6 points. You start or 7 points. You start in the middle where you're fully balanced between these two ideals. The one that they talk about right in the book is self-reliance versus trust. So you have these two opposing principles, and depending on how you take action, what you do, you may shift more towards self-reliance versus trust, or more towards trusting your allies as opposed to being that lone wolf.
Right.
And
trust is hard. You have to be vulnerable. You have to let people in.
Right.
Down.
Exactly.
Yeah. Less self-reliance.
So there's
like, I don't need anybody else. I can do it myself. I've always been alone. I'll always be alone.
Right. So the balance mechanic is a lot of the kind of role playing of talking to people. There's a whole subset of moves and techniques that you can do based strictly on the balance scale. Like I said, as you kind of progress, you're going to shift further and further away from center of like being fully centered, of having that perfect balance of being self-reliant enough to be able to do things on your own, but also trusting enough that you can also work within a group type of situation. As things progress, as people call you out, as people try to shift your balance, like you can actually shift a player's personal balance one way or another using different moves. If the balance ever gets shifted all the way to one side, it's called like losing your balance. And there are actual mechanical things that happen, because basically you start at 0.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get more trusting, you'll gain, like as your track shifts towards trust, you'll gain a +1 on any rolls relying on that balance track of being trusting, but you get a -1 to anything regarding self-reliance. Whoa. And as you go along, it'll go to a +2, -2, and then a +3, -3. And once you shift off the end of it, you lose your balance. There are some, and there are some kind of mechanical and roleplay implications to that. Not a whole lot happens physically to you other than your morals are shaken, and you're going to have to take from like that point on, you are fully shifted into whatever that principle may be.
Cool.
After you have some time to rest or what have you, you'll recenter, but your center will now be shifted one closer to that particular principle.
Yeah.
So now, when you start shifting the other way, it's going to go to a +or-4 on the one side, and then you only get +or-2 on the side where where it's closer.
Interesting. Very cool. Okay, interesting. So, in the example we did was self-reliance and trust as the two opposing principles. Mm-hmm. Is that just like, right. Do they have a bunch of options, or do you as the player just come up with two on your own?
No, so they are actually, it's part of your playbook that you choose.
Oh, sick.
As a character. So
okay,
on the in the character creation, it will say, okay, you want to play the adamant, the person who is, or the one I got right here is the bold. The bold fights to live up to their self-image and can earn others' trust and confidence. Play the bold if you want to build your reputation and leadership skills. Their principles are loyalty and confidence.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Playbooks. That's fun. I've done a bunch of systems with playbooks.
Yes. So that's basically the same thing. And then the last thing I want to touch on before we get into actual player creation and all that stuff is the fact that bending exists in this game. Like, it is definitely a core mechanic of the game. However, most bending stuff, unless you have a specific technique that allows you to do something with bending or an actual like bending technique, it's pretty much all flavor. Most of the bending is all flavor. If you're in the middle of like a field as an earthbender and you're like, I want to make a chair, you make a chair. There's no roll needed. You just do it. There are certain mechanics called one of the biggest mechanic that you would use for one of the biggest techniques that you would use for bending would be like rely on training and skill, which will, again, once we get into combat and stuff like that, I'll be able to talk more about techniques, but we still got a lot to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are techniques and stuff but it's not like, there's not like a water whip technique.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to use water bending and you can make that however you want to do that.
I totally get it.
Your water bending is however you describe it. And it's really, honestly, a lot of fun.
I like
because
that
there's no limits. Yeah, there's no limits. There's no set moves it's not like D&D spells where you have specific certain things that you can do. It's just, I'm going to use my bending to do this.
Yeah, it would be more broad. It would be more like comparable to like saying, I'm going to use my necromancy magic.
Right.
And just like, as opposed to being like, I cast 3rd level animate dead.
Right, exactly.
Right. So it's like
exactly.
a little more
it's just
broad where you're saying, I'm
broad.
using my water bending. Here's how it looks, because you get to flavor it and describe it and have fun with it. But it's not necessarily like, well, I use my 2nd level ability to do
right,
nice
exactly.
water whip.
Exactly.
Blood
right.
bend.
And I really love I love that aspect of it being like the bending is all flavor, and that's awesome.
That's really cool. I wasn't expecting
because
but it makes sense.
And also
I could see that getting complicated fast.
Oh yeah, for sure. Also, you don't have to be a bender. I talked about this earlier, but you really don't. There actually are, other than the 4 styles of water bending when you're picking a fighting style, you can also choose the 4 styles of bending in general. You can also choose to be proficient with weapons or technology.
It's pretty sick.
So like that becomes your fighting style as opposed to bending.
Yeah, I would if I was going to go that route, and I already told you before we started recording, I can't see myself doing that for a couple playthroughs, but I would have to go Tylee. Style
Tylee
character.
would be awesome.
I mean.
Yeah. She is definitely one of like the bold style playbook. But yeah, it's the and again, it all comes down to flavor. Like really and honestly, there are a handful of techniques that you can learn that are one style specific. Most everything, or most of your techniques are all going to be applicable. It's just kind of a flavor thing. Are you a firebender? Are you a waterbender? It gives you as a player a way to kind of figure out how you want to flavor your different stuff. But mechanically, not really a whole lot of difference between the different styles. So yeah, we've been touching on it a little bit. Let's actually get into the actual player creation now that we're in it. The first thing you do when you're going to be making a player is you're going to choose a playbook. There are 10 different ones. There's the Adamant, the Idealist, the Bold, the Pillar, the Guardian, the Prodigy, the Hammer, the Rogue, the Icon, and the Successor.
And the Boulder.
And the boulder. No, yeah. So each different playbook has their own different styles. Obviously, I already talked about what the bold is. The Idealist is like a survivor of some terrible harm, now struggling to maintain hope and a belief in the good in the world and others. The balance principles are forgiveness versus action. So it kind of tells you a quick rundown in the core playbooks of what each person is and what they do. So you'll pick a playbook, and each balance track, like the principles are different, and also you do have certain moves that are solely only you can use as that character. When you first make your character, you'll be able to choose 2 special moves. And then as you grow and progress, you'll be able to choose more.
Yeah,
for the Adamant.
I would say for people listening, if you're like unfamiliar with playbooks, it's about as close to a class, but I would almost say like
Yes.
a subclass in some ways, but like that you'll get with games like this. There's a ton of examples. The Crypt Has Opened by When Suddenly Games is one, but also like almost any Powered by the Apocalypse system, like Masks or others.
Yeah.
You do playbooks as opposed to like really specific.
Yeah, like that's
classes
definitely
and
where,
stuff.
yeah, it's definitely the parallel I would choose between them of like this is your quote unquote class that you're going to be playing.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so the ways that you progress are also specific to your character. Now, progression is interesting because the way that this is set up, the way that the system is set up is, you know, that you don't necessarily have to keep playing the same characters. You don't have to continue telling the same story. You can jump around. It's basically set up as a bunch of one shots.
Yeah.
But you can also, as as you grow, as your like the end of a session comes along, for the adamant, I'm just looking right in the book, for their growth question, because their balance track is restraint versus result. Their growth question, did you grow, is did you seek support or guidance from others? Did you just do something because it was results, or did you hold back and ask for help, ask for guidance? What would you do in this situation type of deal? And so as you grow, you'll learn new moves. You'll also learn special techniques that are unique to your fighting style. And you can start with a learned move, or I think you start with one mastered move, and you can start with a learned move if you're planning on doing a campaign. And basically the difference between that is mastered moves you can use pretty much whenever. A learned move is something that you have learned and somewhat trained, but haven't been able to use it in combat yet. And then as you use it more in combat, then it becomes a mastered move and you can go on to a different learned move. So some of those are playbook specific. Some of them are fighting style specific. And that is a very deep conversation for another day. But yeah, and so using the playbook, it gives you kind of general principles that you abide by. It also kind of gives you some jumping off points as far as like what their demeanor would be like, how they would generally act in a given situation, on the very broad side of things. So are they more helpful? Are they more wanting to just be self-serving? That type of deal. And so that's, after you choose the playbook, you're going to choose your fighting style, which we've already talked about. What bending style do you want to do? Do you want to be a non-bender? Do you want to just use weapons and technology? There are their own things, and each group, like each era, also has these different things. How technology appears in the Kyoshi era versus the Korra era obviously is going to be vastly different, but it's not like there's no technology in Kyoshi's time. It's earlier technology. You're using a single shot flintlock as far as, weapons or something like that. Or
I mean, Korra had robots practically.
Korra had a giant goddamn robot. The last episode of Korra was a giant
Vera.
Big O style robot. Yeah.
She was a badass, I will say that, as far as villains go. A metal bending badass. When she fought the Korra a couple times, it was like, woof, Korra.
This is a joke. This is a joke. You got to get your shit together, Korra. Come on. Yeah, just that I really liked that they gave her like a more like it's basically just boxing as her fight, like her martial art that she used for metal bending or earth bending in general is just boxing, which is really cool. I like that.
It's so fun to see the different styles, or even like the different. It's almost like how you would refer to like a language having dialects. With the bending having different styles, like you could have 4 different earthbenders, but they all do it like with a slight different flavor. Not even to mention like sand bending and stuff. Oh my gosh, so fun.
Yeah. So we are quickly approaching the hour mark here, and we have only been talking about player create. Like we've only really touched the very surface of this. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what the different stats are in the game because we, obviously there's going to be dice rolls that you're going to do. And each playbook has a kind of starting off point for what your stats are going to be. Most of the time it's going to be like a +1, -1, or a 0 on each stat. The stats being creativity, which is going to be kind of using your wits and your mind. Focus, this is your ability to perform under pressure and, mechanically keep your head cool while you're trying to do stuff. A lot of your fighting mechanics are going to come from focus. Harmony is going to be more balance related, of either resisting change to your own balance or causing a balance change in somebody else. And then passion, which is going to be mostly forcing, like not forcing, but more urgent. It's another kind of balance stat of you're making impassioned pleas to people. You're more your emotions, or you're using your emotions more to get people to do what you want, as opposed to using your fists or, hey, everybody, let's get along. It's the other side of, hey, everybody, let's get along. It's like, we don't necessarily have to get along. Just do what I say.
Right.
So the way that these all work is like, these are what is going to be added to your D6s when you roll. So, say a player wants to trick a guard, which is one of the abilities that one of the moves that you can do. The GM will come back. Okay, go ahead and roll creativity. You're going to roll 2d6, and you're going to either add or subtract from whatever your creativity says. So if it's +1, you'll add a +1, obviously, and then if it's -1, you'll
rolled an 11. I don't know what I add or
minus. So even if you had a -1, that would still be a great success. So, so basically the way that it works, after you've picked your plus or minuses, or, your playbook determines your plus or minuses, you can also, when you're creating the character, choose one stat to gain a +1 in. So if you've already got a +1 in creativity and you've got a -1 in passion, you can either bring that -1 in passion to a 0, or you can get a +2 in creativity.
Interesting.
So you can kind of choose how you're doing that. And then you can also choose to set your balance off to one side or the other of your balance track, depending on what you think your character would do. And that kind of just leads to more balanced moves later on. So the moves and the features we'll go over real quick. These are kind of like your spell lists in D&D. Like the adamant can access certain moves in the book that are, the adamant and the bold will be able to choose one move, as opposed to only the bold can choose this other move. It's kind of class based on those type of deals, and you'll learn them as you go along and progress through the story. As far as basic moves, there are a handful of moves that everybody can do at all times, whatever, willy-nilly. The basic moves are to assess a situation. You'll roll on the creativity table, or not roll on the creativity table. You'll roll for creativity. And then on a 7 to 9, you'll be able to ask one question of the game master. These are specific questions that I'm not going to detail out right now, but there are specific questions. There's like a list of them, and you can ask the GM one of the questions. If you get a 10 or higher, you can ask 2 questions, and GM must answer honestly, obviously.
Dope.
There's the next one is guide and comfort. This is going to be a harmony roll. If on a 7 or higher, they will embrace your guidance, and you can clear 1 condition off of them or 2 fatigue. If you get a 10 or higher, you can also shift that person's balance if you choose to.
Gotcha.
So this is mainly done to help. This is basically to either keep somebody from going down or from losing their balance or something like that. You can actually, if you get a 10 or higher, pull them back off of that edge of their track. The next ability that everybody can do is called Intimidate. This is going to be a passion roll. On a 7 or higher, or on a 7 to 9, the person getting intimidated gets to choose one of these actions. They can either flee or go get back up. They'll back down, but keep an eye on you. They'll give in, but with some kind of a stipulation, or they will attack you, but they'll be off balance, and the GM will mark a condition for them. Off balance generally will come with some kind of a negative combat connotation type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
On a 10 or higher, you'll get to pick from that list as far as what you want that NPC to do. There's also plead, which is a harmony roll. This is basically asking, hey, can you help us out? On a 7 to 9, they'll need more kind of guidance or evidence that they will, not be harmed or what have you, from action that they take to help you. They will want to help you, but they'll need a little bit of extra coaxing. Yeah. The example that they used in the book was, oh, I'm the leader of this mercenary guild, or, I really need you to help me take on these bad guys. I rolled an 8. GM says, okay, we'll roll plead. I rolled an 8. Okay. So they want to help you, but they're not really sure if it's going to be in their best interest. And then you say, oh, well, I'm the leader of XYZ mercenary guild. We just need a couple more bodies. And then they go, okay, fine, we'll come with you.
Gotcha.
And then on a 10 plus, you will gain, they'll succeed. They'll do whatever you want. And then also you'll get some kind of a lucky opportunity of, oh, hey, you're going to gain more information about a bad guy. You'll gain more help than you expected. You'll get some kind of other item or something that, will, what have you. It's kind of a GM's discretion. It's something that will be dictated by the story 9 times out of 10, but you'll get some kind of bonus on top of, it's like a great success. They'll help you, and also you'll get some.
Cool.
So rely on skills and training. That's our next ability or move that you can do. This is your fighting move / using your bending and stuff like that. This is 9 times out of 10 what your bending skills and all that stuff is going to be. It's going to be a focus roll. On a 7 to 9, you don't do it perfectly, and it may lead to some kind of an unexpected consequence, or you can mark 1 fatigue. Basically, the DM will say, okay, you do it, but like say they're trying to use airbending to leap a wall. They'll say, okay, you use your airbending, you rolled a 7, you're going to get over the wall. However, as you do so, coming down on the other side, you notice you're going to land in a big old pile of pots and pans that's going to alert the enemy to your presence. You can either A, allow that to happen, set the alarm bells off, or B, you can mark 1 fatigue and not have that thing happen. On a 10 or higher, it just works flat out. Does exactly what you expect it to do.
Incredible. That makes sense to me. Success with consequences. Common thing that you see in a lot of systems that aren't D&D. D&D is like, there are a lot of DMs who will like use DCs as a range or scale of success. However, that's not necessarily how it's normally written into the rules in terms of D&D. Right. Normally it's pretty binary. It's more closely related to like armor class and stuff, where it's like, hey, the armor class is 15. If you get a 15, you hit. Not a 15,
right.
Lower than a 15, you miss. There's no like scale, success with consequences, whatever. You hit, but no, it's just yes or no. So yeah, right. This can, I think this, for a DM, this can take a little getting used to. The idea of having to think of consequences when people succeed, and for players, this can be something difficult to get used to. Just from like, you're used to being like, well, I rolled pretty good. I beat the quote unquote DC. And it's like, yes, you did, but there's going to be consequences. Don't worry. Just because those consequences might sometimes have a quote unquote bad flavor to them. Like, it's pushing this story forward. I promise. It's still a success.
Yeah. It's still a success. You still do what you wanted to do. And honestly, if you have the fatigue points to just be like, okay, well, I don't want that to happen, I'll just mark a fatigue. And basically that would be the equivalent of, as if we're talking about the going over the wall. Oh, I see that I'm going to land in these pots and pans. I'm going to exert myself a little bit more to clear them all the way.
Yeah.
So that, I'm going to just use another little burst of air to get myself past whatever this consequence is. And you take the hit on the fatigue side of things, but that consequence doesn't happen.
Yeah.
The next thing is you can obviously everybody loves doing this. Try to trick somebody. You can be a little tricky little guy. and this is going to be a roll on the roll for creativity. If you get above a 7 or a 7 or higher, they'll fall for the trick. On a 7 to 9, you'll be able to pick one of these, and then on a 10 or higher, you pick 2. So either they stumble and you can take a +1 moving forward against them. Just anytime you roll against them, you're getting a +1 to whatever you roll. They could act foolishly and give up some kind of an opportunity, story wise, like give up some information or give up, a item or something like that. Some kind of opportunity will be presented to you for story progression by the GM. Or they overcommit and they're just fooled by you for some time. Like this is the equivalent of, oh man, what is the when they're getting to Amashu the first time, Pip Papadopoulos or whatever, Mr. I'm going to be Mr. Pip Papadopoulos, and you just have the broom handle, like the broom bristle mustache. Yeah. And it just works. They're just fooled by that, and then you can just always use that. And actually, one of the playbooks actually has like a bonus to tricking people. Like each playbook has kind of a way to further tweak these skills depending on which one you pick. Obviously, depends on which one gets tweaked. But one of them obviously is called like Mr. Pip Papadopoulos or something like that. And it is specifically like, you get a +3 to creativity when you're trying to trick somebody.
I love that.
And then there's one last thing that everybody can do, but cannot be done in combat, is to help another companion. You mark 1 fatigue, and then you'll give your companion +1 to whatever roll. And you can do this after the roll. After they roll and find out if they succeed or whatever, you can be like, wait, no, hold on, let me help them. Give them a +1. I'll mark a fatigue. And, if they roll a 6, you can bump it up to a 7 or something like that. But it just can't be used in combat. So yeah, and those are the main moves. These are the basic moves that everybody can do. And then there's also balance moves that everybody can do. One is to live up to your principle. This is where the actual mechanics of the balance track, the +1, -1, all that stuff, really starts to come into play, is all of these balance moves, obviously. So if you live up to your principle, you can spend 1 fatigue to use the roll for that principle instead of whatever your stat is. So if you're trying to make a creativity roll and you're really bad at creativity, but your balance track is at a +2 on whatever side, you can spend a fatigue and use that +2 as opposed to the 0.
Gotcha.
The next thing that you can do is try to call somebody out to live up to their principle. This can be used on other players as well. Basically, you will shift yourself 1 away from center, and you'll call out a character to live up to one of their principles. They don't necessarily have to. The next thing is deny a call out. So they can either choose to live up to that, or they can try to deny it. And this is a rare mechanic of denial, is you want to roll low as opposed to high if you actually are trying to deny whatever this call out is. So on a 10+, you must act. If somebody calls you out and you roll above a 10, you have to act as they say, or you mark 1 fatigue and your balance gets shifted 1. On a 7 to 9, you still would do what they say, but your balance does not get shifted. And on a 6 and below, you stand strong, you clear a condition, 1 fatigue, or you shift your balance. So you can do one of those 3 things. So if you're really trying to deny, like it, and this is also like bad guys can do this too, where like they will try to call out somebody to live up to their principle. Like, oh, why are you trusting all these idiots? Obviously, I know that you're supposed to, I've always been this lone wolf type. You need to rely on yourself more. No, don't listen to these guys. And then, you'll try to deny that call out. If you get a 6 or lower, then you will continue down your trust path, or you can shift back towards the self-reliance. It's up to you.
Gotcha.
You can also resist shifting your balance. you can only use one of these at a time. So these are kind of like reaction things, like the deny, call out, resist shifting your balance. These are kind of like reaction things. You can only do one of them. If you resist shifting your balance, you'll roll on your whatever your balance track is. Whether you're trying, depending on the situation, you're either going to be going towards one principle versus another. So depending on the situation, you might be dealing with a plus or a minus on this. But on a 7 to 9, you can choose one thing. On a 10 or higher, you'll choose two. You can clear a condition or mark a growth by acting to prove them wrong. So this will help with your level up and, learning more moves and techniques and stuff. You can shift your balance toward the opposite principle, or you can learn what their principle is. Like, depending on who you're dealing with, you'll learn their principles, and you have to know what a specific NPC's principles are before you can call them out on it and try to shift them. So if you already know what their principle is, you'll just get a +1 forward on them. So like anytime you roll against them, it'll be a +1 because you already know. Or you'll learn what their principles are and you can use that against them.
God bless me. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. And then if you get a 6 or lower, you'll mark a condition and the GM will shift your balance by 2. So if you try to resist and fail, your balance gets shifted by 2 as opposed to just 1. If you ever do fly off the edge of your balance scale, you will lose your balance. And this means to obsess over that principle to the point where it does harm to you or your party or both. You'll choose one thing that will happen, and it's your choice. You can either give in or submit to an opponent, lose control of yourself in a destructive or harmful way, or you can take an extreme action in line with that principle and then flee. Afterward, during the kind of rest portion in between sessions, you will shift your center one step towards whatever principle you went over the edge on, and then you'll clear all your conditions and fatigue, and then you'll reset your balance to the new center. This mechanic is interesting and more role play than pretty much any other system I've been in contact with. Of like, these are strict mechanics that are also based on how you play your character, kind of.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
It's really cool. It is a breath of fresh air. I think it would be really interesting to give it a shot just to see how it would feel.
Yeah.
To have like an idea of, like, it's very common to when you're playing D&D, although not like as laid out like this in terms of part of the system itself. But like in D&D, it's not uncommon to have a character with goals, but they're not as like, they don't have all this mechanic stuff involved to sort of give you a colored lens to view your character through. Right. Similar to like the condition. Which I also think is really cool. That was the part I think so far that I was like, oh shit, that's dope.
The conditions feel like the flaws in Kids on Bikes with me, where it kind of, yes, they're there, but how important or unimportant they are really depends on the role play involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, on top of all of these stuff, the basic moves and the balance moves, there's also trained and custom moves that you can do. Now, that bit right there, the trained and custom moves is probably the crunchiest part of this whole system, and I just don't have time to talk about it. But there, just know that there are ways for you to train new moves and learn new stuff, and go out, find a master of firebending and learn a new skill from them. And then there's actually a progression of, okay, I've learned this move, I've trained it a little bit, and then mastered it. Like it's like learned, trained, and then mastered. So basically, as you progress, it becomes easier and easier for you to use the move. But again, this involves bending styles and also involves different balance moves. And there's also a bunch of combat moves. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do. And it's based on your playbook and a bunch of other stuff. And we just don't have time because I still want to talk about the combat section of it. Combat is so much different in this game than in Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, it's set up in each round. the initiative changes where basically, so there's 3 different stances that you take at the beginning, at the top of a round. There's defend and maneuver, advance and attack, and evade and observe. Each move that you have is related to one of those 3 things. And it says on the move, this is a defend and attack or defend and maneuver stance move. This is an advance and attack move, all that stuff. And the way that combat really usually progresses is the GM will choose all the NPC, pick approaches for all the NPCs, one of those 3. And then the players will pick, and then you will go through in order of, okay, all the defend and maneuver people are going to go first. They're going to do their defend and maneuver stuff. Then the advance and attack people are going to do their stuff. And then the evade and observe people are going to do their stuff. The way that that works is you will roll your 2d6, depending on how high or low you roll, you will be able to pick 1 or 2 techniques that you will be able to do in that phase. And then, it's a lot more narrative in like, I'm going to choose to defend and maneuver. And the way that I'm going to do that is, I'm going to try to rely on my skills and training or what have you to do something. Whether it's to make a wall out of earth or whatever. Same with advance and attack. Okay, you roll. Okay, you can pick 2 moves to do. I'm going to punch them and also try to intimidate them. That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so everything gets resolved in order, each thing. And then at the end of the round, the GM goes over people who have been knocked off balance, like their balance track has been thrown through the end, which obviously the balance moves all have their whatever initiative thing they go in. Or if you get fully marked of fatigue and conditions and you go down, like that gets resolved at the very end of the round.
Mm-hmm.
And that's combat. Each move kind of has its own things that it can do. It can also give status effects, either negative or positive. A lot of the evade and observe stuff gives positive effects to your team, or the defend and maneuver stuff gives positive effects to yourself. The advance and attack stuff generally will put negative status effects on enemies. So negative status effects, if you get doomed, basically you are trapped in some kind of awful, like James Bondian laser gun thing. This is doomed. You're going to mark 1 fatigue every round until you get freed. Either you can get yourself free by coming up with something narratively, or a friend can help you. You can become impaired. What the hell was that? Impaired, where you mark 1 fatigue, or you'll take -2 to all your physical actions. So anything that you do physically, you'll lose -2 to it. Or you can mark 1 fatigue and not have that happen. You can get trapped, where you'll mark 3 conditions, or you mark 3 of conditions or fatigue. You can mix and match. So like you mark 2 fatigue and 1 condition, or 3 conditions, or what have you. And that will get you free. But it just basically, something has happened, you're trapped, you can't do anything until you do one of these things, until you mark conditions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then stunned, obviously stun sucks the worst. Just can't do anything for a round.
Skip a turn.
Yep. As far as positive status effects that you can get, empowered will allow you to clear 1 fatigue at the end of the round. Favored will allow you to choose an additional basic or mastered technique next round. This is kind of getting into, like I said, you can do 1 or 2 things generally. If you're favored, you'll be able to choose 3 things if you roll 10 or higher when you're choosing what you want to do.
Gotcha.
You can become inspired and shift your balance one way or the other, however you choose, or you can be prepared, where you'll add a roll to avoid marking, add 1 to a roll, or you can avoid marking a condition. This is basically very much in the evade and observe category of, either you're going to have to roll for something, you can add 1 to that, or if you lose something and you would normally have to mark a condition, you can just choose not to.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that's Avatar Legends in a nutshell. Obviously, I could sit here and talk about this for 3 days because we haven't even talked about all the different moves and techniques and stuff that you can do and how level ups work and all of that stuff. This is very much a very broad strokes. Hey, you want to play Avatar Legends? Here's the information that you need to get going.
Right.
But check out on it's on Magpie Games. They have Avatar Legends. There's the core rulebook, which has everything that I just talked about, as well as a lot of character creation stuff, all the playbooks, all of that stuff in it. There's adventure modules. There's all kind of stuff. There's all kind of resources at Magpie Games. I would say check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's a really fun system. And
I would love to run, or like even I would prefer to be a player first, but I would love to have us do this.
Yeah. I would
to make
I would
a couple sessions or something. Be dope as heck
on getting something together for this because I do want to run this again. It was a lot of fun and it's a very fun storytelling vehicle.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. I think
exactly as crunchy as you want it to be.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be super crunchy, but it can be.
I dig that. Before we round everything off, I know obviously we would love to do more episodes, not just on other TTRPGs, but specifically Avatar, Last Airbender TTRPG. So listeners, feel free to send us an email, let us know via downloads and views and stuff. Like, how did you feel about this episode? Did you enjoy it? Do you want to hear more? Do you want us to do more episodes on more TTRPGs? Let us know. Join the Discord.
Absolutely.
Send us an email. So you want to be a DM at gmail.com. Comment on things, and that will let us know. But before we fully finish out and get into the intro, Taylor, I have a question sent to us from one of our listeners.
Okay.
They ask, is it in this game, is it possible to be the Avatar, or is that not necessarily something that mechanically is set up that way?
No,
I feel like that's
really
got to be a question that DMs are going to get all the time.
Yeah,
they run this game.
So the way that this game is set up, no, you are generally not going to be the Avatar. That's not to say you can't do it, but canonically, the avatars are generally set in stone. Like we have a generational timeline of Kyoshi, Roku, Aang, Korra.
Right.
So obviously you can go pre-Kyosha. The avatars do exist, and there are stat blocks in the core rulebook. There are stat blocks for each one of the avatars.
Oh, very
as NPCs.
Cool. Oh, it'd be sick to cross their paths, especially Kyoshi.
Yes, and that is definitely 1,000% plausible to happen in the story, rather than a player playing the avatar.
I love that. Awesome. Well, that question was sent in by Fresca Rocks. Thank you, Fresca. Really appreciate your question and your sponsorship.
That's all we can get into this time. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Soyouwannabeadm, or you can ask us a question at Soyouwannabeadm at gmail.com. If you like the episode, don't forget to give us 5 stars and a review wherever you found us. Check out the Patreon and the Twitch with the link in the description. Join us next time for more Dungeon Master tips and tricks.
Bye.
See.
And now, I get to shout out the members of our Patreon gang. Nub Muffins, may Palor's light shine upon you. And then there's Tappy, Molly, and Elijah. Thank you all so much for being members of our Patreon gang. Remember, you can find the link to that in the description of the episode. And also remember this. We love you. Thanks again, and tune in next time for more tips and tricks from So You Wanna Be a DM.